So we're going to get right on into it. Hello, my name is Bicycle Walrus, otherwise known as B-Dubs, and we are going to do a Light No Fire trailer analysis. Light No Fire is the newest game that has been announced by Hello Games, and it seems to be a spiritual successor to No Man's Sky, except instead of taking place across an entire universe, it is instead going to be taking place on a single planet. A trailer dropped a couple days ago. We've had plenty of time to digest it. So now we're going to cover all the stuff I noticed. I want to say the things you missed, but I haven't seen every trailer analysis video. So I feel like we're going to talk about some things people are missing. So stay tuned. We're going to start from the beginning. So let's just jump right on into it. And I can't even get off this first frame. I can't even get off the first frame. Can't even start watching it without making a few notable observations. One thing you're going to see throughout the entire trailer is you'll notice that there are groups of about 4. There's groups of 4 of our intrepid heroes who are involved throughout much of the cutscenes here. We are dealing with a fantasy sort of planet, and we have fantasy denizens of said planet, and immediately we can notice that some of our heroes here at the bottom are very special in the sense that they are, well, animal creatures of some kind. We have a bunny here on the right. Freaking rabbits. And then, of course, we have a satyr-looking guy. He seems to be like a bluish, pale humanoid with demon horns. So, tiefling fans unite. Let's go ahead and jump on in and get this thing playing. So, a multiplayer Earth, and I really want to put this out here. When this thing was first launched and announced, the very first actual tangible word to describe the game was multiplayer. There's going to be a lot of discussion about multiplayer, and I know there's a lot of folk who love playing No Man's Sky single player. I want to make it very clear that right now on Steam, there are 2 multiplayer or like number of player options or at least tags or badges on the Steam website. One is single player, and the other is online co-op. Now, what we're going to see as we go through the trailer, it seems like there's a lot more than just 4 players running around. Either NPC interactions with the world have gotten incredibly good with Light No Fire, above and beyond anything that we've seen so far in No Man's Sky, or there's more than 4 players around at a time. The actual... how the actual multiplayer aspect is being built, we have no idea. And anybody who tells you otherwise is pure speculation at this point. Some people are saying, well, is it an MMO? Or is it something more like Ark Survival Evolved, where you have the ability to host your own instance and people can then join it? We don't know. We don't know. But let's take it from the MMO perspective if we wanted to. And let's just imagine this. If this is truly an Earth-sized planet, it's Earth, okay? And let's say that we have an active player base of, let's say 500,000. And I think that's generous. All online at the same time. 500,000 is incredibly generous. As time goes on. All online at the same time. I don't know how starting zones or how any of that would work. Who knows? Maybe you could start randomly on any continent in the game. We don't know. We just don't know. The chances of you running into another player, unless you started together as a group, is really, really, really small. The chances are incredibly low, depending on how they do it. So There are 8 billion people on the planet Earth right now, and there's plenty of places you can go to in the world where you will not encounter another human being at all. There's lots of places you could go where there's no one for miles, and you're all alone on an Earth-sized planet with 8 billion people on it. So if we're on an Earth-sized planet in this game, with 500,000 actively concurrent players in the game roaming the world, the chances of you running into somebody else are slim. Not as slim as maybe what we were used to with the world of No Man's Sky, although they did things to kind of help people find each other, but slim for sure. So I'm not exactly sure. They could do a full-on MMO-style launch, but it wouldn't feel like an MMO at all. Everybody could be in the same world state, interacting with whoever they find, but it would not feel like an MMO. You wouldn't be running into a lot of other players. It would be very rare, very hard to do. You might find a small community of players, and then you might feel like, hey, now that I'm in that small community of players, maybe we hang out and work together. I could see definite tribes emerging, not based on who I like or based on some guild advertisement, but rather based on who's around. And that would be a really interesting social thought. When you're dealing with a planet-sized planet and only 500,000 active concurrents. And again, I feel like that's generous. I feel like that's incredibly generous. I think 100,000 would be more along the lines of what we can expect on an average. And even that would be considered generous. So I'm feeling like however they handle multiplayer in this world, it's going to be very different from anything that we've ever experienced before. If you're a solo player, you can definitely play solo in a multiplayer world, depending on a few things, which we'll talk about as we go along. All right, let's get in. Let's continue. So here we see a gentleman who is definitely riding some type of deer oxen thing. One of the big things I want to talk about that I just absolutely love about this trailer. Sean Murray mentioned, hey, these are mountains. They're not game mountains. These are mountains. And if you take a look here, if I were to just take a little, and you see how that trails and it rises and it kind of goes down. And then there's another rolling hill over here, right? And then you have these higher peaks over here, and you could tell maybe that's like a little bit of snow. Could be something like that texture. It's a little further away, so it hasn't rendered in all the way. But you could see all of that. Huge mountain. And I live in the mountains now. I moved recently, earlier this year. I moved to a brand new state, and there are mountains here, lots of mountains, and I love it. And this is exactly what the mountains look like where I live. If I didn't know any better, I'd say this guy was standing in my backyard. And then, of course, we have this strange contraption over here. Now, I think Sean Murray learned his lesson from No Man's Sky, and you can't have monuments or anything that looks like it should be interacted with and then not have an interaction for it. I think that was something that we got used to seeing in No Man's Sky, where it was really about a game of going to different planets, finding really cool vistas and combinations with these objects, these ruins, but you can't really interact with them. This, to me, looks like an interactable object. It was definitely placed there. I don't know the lore of the game, but just looking at it, I would say, oh, that was placed there by an ancient culture, and it's probably conveying a message. Now, we're used to knowledge stones, which would be teaching us the language of the alien creatures of No Man's Sky. This kind of looks like a knowledge stone, but it's not. I'm not sure. Could be something like a cache. Maybe there's something like a reward hidden inside after you solve a puzzle. Pretty cool stuff. And then finally, I have to mention this. I would be just failing as a content creator if I did not mention, look at this foliage. That is something that Hello Games has just nailed in No Man's Sky. Very vibrant colors. You have your natural greens with some nice blues and yellows. This looks like a paradise planet, and it's gorgeous. So well done. And considering the fact that this is all procedurally driven, to see intricate details here in these grass leaves, the stems that are coming out, and then, of course, the blues down here is just awesome. That looks fantastic. Just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. All right, so now we get into this idea or this concept that we're dealing with a fantasy Earth. And I was always hoping that Hello Games would go a fantasy direction with their games. And this is really the first scene that kind of captures our attention and says, hey, what do you think light, no fire actually means? Why that title, Light, No Fire? We've just been saying it, not knowing what it was, and we'll continue saying it forever because that's just the name of the game. But the point is, we have this sort of light, no fire concept. We don't really understand why it's called that yet. And I made a really interesting observation of the trailer. And that is, none of the scenes are at night. There's one where you're close. We're at dusk. We'll see it later. Keep that in the back of your head. There is not a single scene throughout this entire trailer that is at night. Why? Ooh. So we have a fantasy Earth. Real quick here, that looks poisonous. Don't stand there, guys. Don't stand there. Right? For those of us who are used to No Man's Sky, we are aware of hazards. But we're used to alien hazards. What kind of hazards could we find in a fantasy Earth that we're seeing here? And right over here, there's this weird yellowish gaseous cloud that's coming out. And I would imagine that would be a hazard. Would we have ways of overcoming said hazard? I don't know. Interesting. Let's keep going. An unexplored Earth. Again, absolutely gorgeous, but what's going on over here? This is not the only time we see an object like this over here. If I didn't know any better, that looks like a sphere, sort of like a mini Death Star kind of thing happening. Maybe something we might be familiar with from No Man's Sky. There is a particular craft which, for whatever reason, is escaping my memory. It's been a while since I played No Man's Sky, guys. I'm gonna be real with y'all. But that's where Nada and Polo hang out, right? But I don't think it's that. But it is curious. If I were standing on a vista with my buddies and I saw that out in the distance, my first thought would be, "Hey, y'all, let's go." Now, something else that you might not have noticed here in this trailer is here we have what looks to be like a tiger guy, and he's got big paws. Can't tell if he's got a tail or something going on back here. He's kind of like a bear. And look at this. He's got some type of glowing weapon on his back. It could be a weapon. It could be a tool. I don't know. But that's really cool. Then we have an antlered guy. That could be a helmet. Could be a helmet. And then our satyr here, and this guy, we really just can't tell who he is. So definitely some things there to think about. So then we get our underwater scenes, and something to kind of just quickly rewind here real quick. I want to show this to you. We have what seems to be a broken vessel that is sunk to the bottom of the ocean. And then take a look at this creature right here. And we'll just go ahead and play through that. That is a big octopus. So if you want to make up some calamari, you have the option, and it seems to be in pursuit of our players here who are swimming through. Now, another thing that we're going to notice here is that we have a school of fish. I see 2 species of fish, maybe 3. Yep, I see 3. So you have this species, you have a smaller one here, and then you have these over here. So very diverse water life. Already seeing that. That looks really, really cool. And if you've played No Man's Sky, you would know that they have No Man's Sky has one of the best underwater exploration sort of things that you could take a look at and play around and engage with. And there was at one point an update in which they really started trying to gamify the underwater spaces, which did add some really cool things to it. I really hope that they continue building upon Abyss and doing some really neat things for underwater exploration, because one thing about planet Earth is that we recognize that planet Earth has continents. People live on land. We live on land. In a fantasy world, wouldn't it be great if you could also explore the water? Well, that's something that is actually touted or advertised on the Steam page. Like, go to the highest heights and go to the lowest lows, explore the depths and the underwaters. So even further decreasing the chances of us running into another player randomly, now we have explorable underwater areas. Something, again, that Hello Games has done a fantastic job with in No Man's Sky. I would imagine that would also be a fun, explorable area in Light No Fire. All right, so now the next thing I want to point out to you, and let's see here. Can I get this bad boy over? I can. All right, next thing I want to point out, and this is really, really cool, and I think people need to talk about this more. Down here, you will notice that there is a symbol that is above what seems to be some type of weird rose compass. It is not a compass, but rather it's telling you about what type of biome you are in. It's telling you about the time of day, and it's telling you about temperature. So one thing you might want to pay attention to as we scroll through the next part of the scene is that this symbol here is going to change from that of a fish, meaning we're underwater, to a leaf, meaning we are in a forest biome. So let's go ahead and play it through. And here comes the change. And we also noticed that as we got out of the water, the temperature also adjusted. So when that temperature adjusted, we went from that dot to this dot, so it's warmer now. So we know that is a very clear indication of temperature. And down here, there is a wonderful little snowflake for us to take a look at. That means that is definitely a temperature gauge. At the bottom, it is cold, and when it gets up to the top, it gets warm. And here, in the center here, this is, in my mind, a very clear indicator of the time of day. Now, that is not something that we're used to seeing in No Man's Sky. And in a game titled Light No Fire, that would mean to me, at least indicate to me as someone who's a fan of the survival genre of games, that time of day, daytime versus nighttime, things are going to be different. The world changes from day to night. Why else would I need a timer letting me know when night is coming? So day-night cycle is now important. I think that is super clear based on context clues from the game's UI and based on the name of the game. Whether or not that bears any fruit, we'll find out. All right, let me get this thing out of your way, and let's continue on. Oh, uh-oh. Uh-oh. We're doing the No Man's Sky flash-throughs. Here we go. All right, so this is something in particular that I think definitely needs to be... Yeah. Okay. Big thing here, guys. And the biggest thing I think we need to talk about is this right here. In every other scene, we see things like swords, we see things like bows, we see shields, right? This is the first time we get to see an equipable that looks like a magic weapon. And if you take a look at the hat here, that is definitely a mage hat. So we're looking at somebody who is fairly well equipped. Yeah, he's got a nicer looking cape. He's got himself some nice boots. He's got himself all sorts of fun stuff happening here. And then there's this weird cube up in the air. And that should be familiar to anybody who plays No Man's Sky. And I forget exactly what they're called because I haven't played No Man's Sky in quite a long time. But they're these cubes, and you interact with them. You can also find sort of broken ones around, sell them for a lot of gold or credits or whatever it is in No Man's Sky these days. It was never gold. But that is interesting, and it looks like something that we can interact with. Again, I really do think that Sean has really considered a lot of the feedback where you have interactable looking objects. They should be interactable. That looks like an interactive object. That is clearly the destination that our player is going towards. So yeah, that is definitely what I would suspect some type of object of interest, and perhaps maybe even relating to a No Man's Sky-like object. Now, there's a lot of discussion going on. Is there any connection between Light No Fire and No Man's Sky? And the answer is, what do you think? Let's keep going.